Good morning. Good morning. I'll just keep the data with you so that, vital statistics such as certain trends that keep changing, like what was hitting the headlines after the 2011 census was, of course, with the delay announced published in 2015 or so, was that for the first time the Hindu percentage population in the country had registered less than 80%. And of course, when all the other religious groups were registering a fall in the growth rates, Muslim community had registered an increase in the growth rate, etc. And then region-wise also, there was special focus on certain areas of Assam, etc. These details you keep with you so that, look at chapter 11, paper 1. Chapter 11, paper 1. भरोसा नहीं है हैंड राइटिंग पे अमित but to the extent possible avoid typing. To the extent possible you prefer to write. In a long run that would be, it really has an impact in the exam whatever you are writing physically, because at the end of the day your hand that matters there. Unfortunately, still we are into hard copywriting in the UPSC, not in the online exam. Once that happens, I think your handwriting or maybe typing speed matters at that time. The best of the typists would make into service. Instead of officers, you are producing typists there. 11th chapter, can you read out, ma'am? Okay. The second part there in 11th chapter talks about demographic theories. That's where we are going to study various theories of population, etc. And this particular aspect of demography, census, etc., it will also be of use for us in chapter 2 of paper 2, where we are going to study the structure of Indian population, various characteristics there, like, biogenetic variability, linguistic variability, etc. That's where also we can expect questions related to the census. I have said this earlier also, sir, those of you who must be coming for the first time today to the class, you should know that whatever questions we are expecting, or we say that, see, these are the kind of questions that might be asked in the exam, you maintain a separate page of those questions. At the end of your course, you have huge number of questions on which you should be able to write. Because that was the weekend and it was an opportunity for several students to interact and all. One big time question that was asked by many students was that when there is, they say, I know not, they say that many number of students are writing the exam with anthropology, then how should we score better than the others? I thought I would give an answer for that here. In fact, I do not know whether I should say here or not, but I never wanted huge number of students writing from that subject. Because more is the number, more would be the attention of the people, unnecessary attention of the people, unnecessary hype of the people. Generally what used to happen was that people without the knowledge of the neighbor, coolly used to write the exam and then get the marks, and Sublime used to go through the whole thing. And when suddenly people start looking at it as a big one, so just because the first ranker or third ranker was from that subject, it doesn't mean that every second person or every person who is taking the subject would get the same. I don't know whether when I'm saying that it might look to be very cynical, very negative in orientation, but then, sir, considering such kind of developments, even otherwise also I would do that, but what I can look for in the future is the student, our student, has to be really tough. I don't want you to be any passerby who could write maybe a couple of sentences, couple of things on the concepts. I don't want that. Even otherwise, I always aimed at building the concept base of the student. But now with diversification of the content, I mean, we are going to introduce whole lot of new literature for you, especially on the tribal anthropology, with the kind of experiments that UPSC has been doing. I want the students to have a real strength of not simply the new content, because you see, when we say tribal anthropology, 2 or 3 books that are popularly there in the market from the ages, those are the only references that generally students use. But then I thought I would communicate this to you. Should really be a different lot. It should be like, if you are there, the others should be there. I mean, there should be a huge lot of gap there. For which I will be working. You should also be working with a single-minded focus, whatever we give to you in the class. So you should be really tough with the concepts. So when we, of course, when we are starting with Indian society, etc., several terms seem to be very familiar to us. I also took this because I thought maybe it'll be a different, one of the ways of starting the syllabus, of course. And secondly, people would think that, okay, maybe it's on the easier side. But definitely the subject is not so very easy. I mean, if at all you haven't finalized the optional, you can give a second thought about it. I didn't say much there, but then if at all any concept problem is there, you did approach me immediately in the class. Regarding some soft copies, we were actually trying to work out on it. Maybe we would try sending it to the mail, or maybe we would put a Dropbox arrangement. I dump whatever I feel that I should share with you. Because for the new books to come to you, I think it will take about 25 days or so, 25 to 30 days. By which time you would be relying, 1, on the class notes that you're writing, 2, the soft copies that I might be sharing, 3, R.K. Sharma's Indian society. That's it. In today's class, so I said that as far as your census is concerned, you keep a watch on it. You try to, I do not know how you study the facts, how you study the numbers. Many people do not like reading the numbers. But then we don't want the student to memorize the numbers. There are different ways in which you remember the numbers. There are certain trends that you should remember. So it's like, maybe a map is one thing that is very important. I said to you that, just like that, you slip certain maps in your pocket before coming to the class, India maps, that you should be religiously doing. So you see how are the percentages moving. And also you try writing data on sex ratios of different religious groups, child sex ratios, literacy rates, how they were changing, and then maybe perhaps birth and death rates. These are the vital statistics that you should be having, because sometimes there are questions, not specifically on religion, overall based questions have been asked. Comment on the changing sex ratio of tribal population in India. Comment on the changing sex ratio of tribal population in India. You cannot write answer to such kind of questions unless you have, number 1, numbers. Secondly, you should know the trends. That you keep in mind. We will visit that later. In today's class, I have 2 things to do. First part of my class, as is going to be a general trend, we would be exposing you to some new terminologies. There are 2 terms I left you with in the last class. I said action anthropology and applied anthropology. I would pick up from there, and then I would be introducing, so this is what is the content of the day. One will be the meaning of these words. Action anthropology versus applied anthropology. Then I would take you to another term called ethnicity and ethnic groups, in which context we would be talking about one particular person, a very popular man called Barth. Frederick Barth. And I am introducing ethnic groups primarily because I would want you to finally take you to the second part of our class of Indian anthropology, where I would be formally introducing the term called Varna. This is going to be the focus of the class today, and if things go well, I might also begin with another topic called ashrama. So the coming couple of days we would be discussing mostly about Varna, ashrama, and then we have another beautiful concept called Purushartha. That's where we are going to talk about. Of course, when I'm introducing all this, I'm going to talk a bit about Hinduism. That's how it is. Actually, when I had left you in the last class, I was talking about three people, D.N. Majumdar, M.N. Srinivas, and Vidyarthi. That's where I had actually mentioned these words. See, as such, as I was telling in the previous classes, the discipline of anthropology seemed to have born from the British. Even today, if you pick up any book on anthropological theory, you can popularly see the anthropological thought books that are there in the market. Did you purchase R.K. Sharma? If you haven't, you do it. For ribbon cutting, I'll come for opening the book. Because generally, when we purchase the book, it will take time for us to open. My request is, whenever you are purchasing a book, try to start reading within first 2 or 3 days of time. Otherwise, you would lose interest in it. Exploring the new one should happen immediately. Otherwise, it will become an old one. It would go into old books rack. I was saying that in any of the anthropological thought books, if you observe, we see the categorization of the discipline, categorization of any of the schools of thought on the basis of nationalities. That somehow had come as a trend in the discipline. So we see popularly British anthropology, French anthropology, or German, and then American. Some people divide it into European variant and American variant. American anthropology was much late to come, whereas a lot of other experiments, etc., were done by the British. And of course, even if people were from Germany or Austria or France, etc., those days it was a fashion, of course, even today, to study anthropology in the London School of Economics. That was a high authority of the discipline at that time. So most of the Europeans used to get trained in London School of Economics Anthropology Department. I'll have to say this here, meaning I am once again taking the help of Franz Boas. Somehow, certain names we cannot do away with in any class for that matter. I do this use extensively because you will have to own them. You should feel that they are your family actually. You know them basically. One small reference I give you, then I will take you to, because what anthropology has to study, how anthropologist has to work, how he should be presenting his views, etc., was a subject matter in Boasian writings. He was somebody like, giving a blueprint and showing a way to the future anthropologists. See, this is how you will have to work. These are the areas where you should work, and this is what has to be your approach, kind of a thing. That's the reason why we say, most of the thinkers, especially those that are given in your syllabus, most of them were at some point of time or the other were trained by Boers. Are you happy in the class? Monday morning, any Monday blues? Okay? I give pauses because if I see something unhealthy happening in the class. One story with which I would start the whole thing. Have you visited any museums any time in your life? What museums? Allerginga. And what else? Any archaeological museums, any tribal museums? Make it a habit. From whichever city you come, every major city has some museum. Even Hyderabad has several museums. Anthropology museum, archaeology museum, etc. And museum visits are not entertainments. They are not to be entertainments. Meaning that it's always better you go alone to the museum, not in her or his company. Those are not the places of freaking out. At many places, at such places, a lone traveler is better. Because you have to spend time on each of the artifacts, considerable amount of time, maybe sometime taking a note, maybe sometime drawing a picture, maybe if at all they are allowing taking some picture or taking a video there, kind of a thing. It calls for a lot of work to be done in the museum. I said to you this in the earlier class that Boas had worked in all the fields of anthropology. And he was the one who started with this practice, with this style of working, approach of working in the discipline which we call now as museum methodology. We actually can expect questions on methodologies, different research methodologies. As such, we have a chapter 8 itself there, research methodologies. Museum methodology is one. Generally what we do in the museum is we try to preserve the remains of the past, the memories of the past. That may be an artifact, that may be a painting, that may be anything else. He was the one who worked as a curator in several museums, and then he started with this. He was somebody, look at chapter 6, paper 1. Boas was mentioned in this particular school called historical particularism. I'm not explaining what it is. I'm only interested in the word history when it comes to Boas. For Boas, past was important, history was important. So, one of the methods of keeping a record of the history was museum. And that's where he popularized it. This is one aspect of him. So I think by now you have recognized that class after the class, when I'm asking you to say something about Boas, you have several things getting added to his personality. The story goes like this. He was actually an Austrian. He was an Austrian, German Austrian. That time it was Austria only. He was not really happy with the way the so-called Germania was working out things politically, because Germany was a place where huge lot of racial distinction was emerging, and he was the one who was not really happy with the racist kind of writings there. I'm taking the story to America through him. I'm trying to build a bridge between the European anthropology and American anthropology. The reason why I'm doing this, you'll eventually understand. So I am talking about Bowers, who was a German Austrian who was fed up with not simply the politics of the time, the way society was divided on the lines of race and racial atrocities. Because he was talking against all the kind of the political developments that were happening in that day. In the later classes, we are going to see his pictures and videos, etc. There we can notice that there were certain scars on his face, which they say that they were the result of the attacks he had because he was talking against racism, etc. People were not really happy with him. Though he claims at one place that those were the ones that were the result of the attack by a wild bear. But then people say that it is the other way around. He was attacked by the people, the racists, because he was talking against this particular thing. He was not simply unhappy with the political regime of the time, he was also unhappy with the way anthropology was working in Europe at that time. The reason I will tell here. The earliest anthropologists, as I was telling you earlier, were largely depending on the secondary sources of information. They used to write narrations, stories without visiting, and hence you cannot actually come to a conclusion about whether they were correct or incorrect, they were real or hypothetical. But this man believed in writing things with the evidence. Without evidence, you are not supposed to write and say things. And he was also somebody who was saying this, that if something is true for one culture or one group, it need not necessarily be true for the other cultures and populations. Meaning that what might be right for you need not be right for the others. So he meant it that there is nothing like a universal right and universal wrong. I hope you are following. Many people, when they cut only this particular statement, they quickly try to say that maybe anthropology is trying to say that anything can be true and anything can be, because something can be true at some point in some culture group or the other. Is it that anything that we do can be correct? We will be taking this ahead. Now what he was saying was that you should not talk without seeing. So he was trying to tell us how exactly you visit the field, how exactly you do the research. So he was disturbed with not simply the political regime, but the way discipline of anthropology was working in Europe. So he thought that I would rather prefer to leave the continent rather than staying here and trying to fight out. So he left for America. He was in a way a major personality who had introduced anthropology in America, American social sciences. That's why we can actually say that he was carrying the discipline from Europe physically to America. That is the reason why the first ever schools of anthropology that emerged in America were linked to this man. Either the works that he himself had done or his students had started writing, contributing in America. I hope you understood. So there were already certain existing schools of thought in Europe, and he was not happy with what was happening with those schools. He was physically moving to America, trying to say that, see, those schools are wrong and kind of things. And then after some time, so American anthropology was late to come. And the scope was also very different. The focus was also very different. That's how it happens, when a thinker is writing in the political and social setup from which he is writing, from there the theories, the ideas emerge. So if somebody is having one type of a lifestyle and certain ideas and ideologies, they are the result of the entire social and other environmental situation from which they have emerged. Certain things might look to be vague to us in the others' perspectives, but then they might be having their own past and their own rationale behind it. That's how Bowers says that history is very important in order to know why a particular group is existing at one particular stage of cultural evolution. I said something there. Now, when he was introducing this idea that so you should go visit the field, etc. That's where the term started appearing, somewhere in 1920s and 1930s in Europe, especially in Britain. The word applied anthropology came into existence. In fact, what I haven't written there is the other one called academic anthropology. When I say academic anthropology, that can be considered as that wing or that stage of anthropology where you are trying to generate maybe content or maybe certain concepts of the discipline. And when you are generating the discipline, the content, the volumes of the discipline, they may be based on your thought process. They may be based on what you might not have seen or might have seen. But then you are trying to add content to the discipline for the basic content building of the discipline. Whereas in the applied anthropology, what happens is whatever concepts are there in the discipline that you would be using on the field to understand the field situation. And when this applying to the field happens, the application might be by the anthropologists themselves or by the non-anthropologists also in order to understand the situation. Should I repeat? I said, academic anthropology aims at building the content, building the foundation, building the body, muscle of the discipline. Whatever you have built, maybe theoretically, maybe otherwise, when you are trying to apply these concepts to the field, to understand the field situation, that is applied anthropology. And most often applied anthropology is seen as an individual's preference. It's an individual's preference. There is no particular structure, there is no particular methodology, there is no particular field like applied anthropology. It is not a science or it is not a discipline in itself. It is one of the ways of using the anthropological knowledge to understand the field situation. So if somebody is actually trying to start a revolt against the existing system or existing political regime because they are not able to get their things done, they feel that there is an injustice. That's what was happening yesterday, day before yesterday, all that, several political parties, etc., meeting and trying to talk about SC/ST Atrocities Act, a revisit to the SC/ST Atrocities Act. When such things are happening, in order to understand their perspective, using the anthropological knowledge is applied anthropology. When you are applying, you may or may not have the patronage of the government. You may or may not have a patronage of the government. You are trying to apply it. See, whoever is applying there, whether it is an administrator, it may be an academician, it may be an anthropologist, or it may be anybody who is using certain ways of approaching the problem in order to understand the other dimension there. Generally what happens is we might be popularly knowing only one side of the coin, the other side may be missing. In order to understand the other side, when you are using the anthropological knowledge, that we call applied anthropology. They are simply the people who might be presenting the other side of the problem. Okay, so the people who are reading the writings of applied anthropologists may or may not take their points of view as credible ones. They may or may not accept. Those recommendations or those writings may be reserved only for the paper, may not take the popular form on the field. I hope you are following what I am saying. These terms are very important, sir, before we get into the discipline. You understood there? You understood there? Any problem? Any problem so far? I was trying to talk about two terms. One was academic anthropology, the other is applied anthropology. Application of the principles, methods, concepts of anthropology discipline to understand the field situation is applied anthropology. Okay. Now, I said that whatever applied anthropologist is generating, that may or may not be of a credible value to the others. that may remain simply a journal writing and nothing more than that. On the other hand, when I say action anthropology is that field, I may say that it's that field, though a narrow one, where the governments of the day might use the services of anthropologists intentionally so that the anthropologist can be an individual or a mechanism of providing solutions to the situation. It is, I repeat, sir, I repeat, in applied anthropology you are trying to understand what is happening on the field with the help of the concepts. Whereas in action anthropology, as the name suggests, maybe it is anthropologist in action. He can be in action only if the governments of the day are promoting him or accepting him. So, if the governments of the day are using the services of the anthropological practitioner, who might be giving an altogether new concepts to solve the problem there, or maybe he is using the existing data, existing concepts in order to give a solution to the situation. So he is actually somebody like a participant there. He is getting into the situation and trying to give a solution to it. Maybe occasionally he may fight for that particular solution also. Action anthropology. Going back to those names, LP Vidyardhi can be considered as an action anthropologist. So if I am writing this sentence in the future classes, that Vidyardhi was an action anthropologist, you should know that, yes, maybe he was instrumental in providing solutions to situations. I'll give you one example there, in order to ascertain the point that he was an action anthropologist. Look at your syllabus, chapter 3, paper 2. There is one concept mentioned there called nature-man-spirit complex. I'm not going to explain that, but then I'm giving you a story there. There's one other work that you will have to do, sir, in the meantime. From Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, I want you to glance through the lists of tribals of India and their location. Use a map, try to write, I mean not all the tribes for that matter, at least a few tribes from each of the regions, central region, eastern, western, etc. This is going to help you a lot because some time back there was a question of this kind, namely, it was a tribal anthropology question. The question was health issues, health problems faced by tribal women in central India. That was the question. First of all, you should know which tribe is there in central India. And in general, what could be the health issues faced by the tribals? And in specific, the health issues faced by women in that particular region. That's actually the question. So, in order to write such kind of answers, first of all, you should know the location of them. So, one work that I am giving to you is Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. Try to go through, glance through the lists of tribes. I mean, randomly, whichever name looks to be musical to you, you can go with it. Whichever name looks attractive to you, you can go with it, kind of. Among the tribes there, Vidyardhi was working on one particular tribe in Rajmahal region, Rajmahal Hills region called Maler. I think this is the second tribal name, first in India, I'm introducing to you in the class. The first Indian tribe we are getting exposed to is Maler. That is a tribe living in Rajmahal Hills. in slightly northeastern part of India, Bihar, Rajmahal Hills of Bihar. I'll have to say this here, I'll also have to introduce certain other terms in today's class which I haven't written there, but let me finish the story in brief. I'm talking about a story of 1950s and 60s, when of course the first Prime Minister was ruling. Interestingly, he had introduced several concepts in tribal anthropology, tribal administration. Many of the anthropologists were in the close friend circle of first Prime Minister. And hence we can see the use of anthropologists in several developmental and other aspects. That was a glorious time for anthropologists in India. After Nehru, there was a steep fall, and that fall continued for a long time. In topics like evolution of anthropology in India, we are going to see when, again, the role of anthropologist was considered important in independent India. But somehow, generally what happens is if you had taken a back seat, it would become very difficult for you to forge ahead in the race. So unfortunately, when countries like India, who were instrumental in the beginnings of anthropology, when the governments of the day did not give importance to the discipline, others forged ahead, and you, who gave the subject matter, were laid back. And that gap continued, is still continuing. You would be really surprised to know that several countries in Africa, South Africa for that matter, Malawi for that matter, every department has anthropologists at work. Every department, irrespective of what it is, at the provincial and at the government of the state level. Here, interestingly, even in the Tribal Affairs Ministry, I do not know how many anthropologists are actually employed. That's the state of affairs. Lack of having a tribal cadre, tribal welfare cadre, speaks the kind of importance that we should have actually given, we are not able to give. These are the things that in a big way we are going to talk about in our future classes. But here, when it comes to Malar, the Rajmahal Hills region was the one that was experiencing industrialization and mining, etc. At that time, 1950s and 60s, if you could recall the Bihar region, the erstwhile Bihar, Jharkhand put together. That was the time when massive mining started, and then Malars were the people who were not really happy with that development, and they were trying to protest. And government of India was trying to understand, they were trying to provide something like a rehabilitation to them, and they were not really willing to take the rehabilitation aspect. So government was really surprised. We are ready to give you compensation. You're not accepting our compensation. That was when Nehru sends LP Vidyarthi to understand the ground situation. Why is it that they're not accepting our rehabilitation package? And that's where he goes to study them. And the result of that study was the concept nature, man, spirit complex. And that was where he was trying to give us several ways of handling such kind of disturbance, such kind of revolts or non-acceptance of tribals in the welfare situation. Even today we see that in certain areas where people are protesting against the developmental programs, etc. And that was the first major study in Indian case involving action anthropology. I have given you one good study there. Are you with me, sir, gentlemen, ladies? You're fine? Done? Can I go to the next one? Koncham gattiga, energetic ga, no? Should have. You're all young fellows, sir. You're all young fellows. I'm sure most of us are below 30. Yeah, below 30, right. Clock ticks so very quickly. You never know when you have passed 30, especially in the world of UPSC. Time flies off. By the time you read one book of tribal administration, 1 year is gone. Let me take you elsewhere. So Mahler was that. And we are going to talk a lot about Mahler in the future classes. Something else is there which I want to talk about in today's class. So action anthropology and applied anthropology. In fact, sir, on that topic, a full-fledged note we will be writing sometime after 20 days of time. Sometime after 20 days in your course, applied anthropology versus action anthropology, because before you formally write down, some more things have to be coming to you, like, several thinkers are there who were critical of using the terminology also. It's like a war zone. The discipline is like a war zone, on terminologies, on methodologies of work, and who is an anthropologist, who is not. It's like an abuse of each other. See, I'm an anthropologist. If you're an anthropologist, I'm not an anthropologist. Look at that, and kind of things. So we would see what all fights are there, kind of things. It's all a war zone that I really enjoy. Let me take you somewhere else. I've written some other terms to introduce in today's class. Before I explain to you, introduce this word ethnicity or ethnic group, I want to add one other term there called ethnography. A word called ethnography. And of course, ethnology. I'll first tell you the meaning of ethnology and then take you to ethnography. While I'm saying out, you may write down that's definition or meaning of the term. See, ethnology is a comparative writing about culture groups. Ethnology is comparative writing about culture groups. I said to you in the previous class that one of the characteristics of anthropology is comparison. It's a comparative study. So if you're writing about one culture group, when I say culture group, that may be a tribe, that may be a caste, that may be a nationality, anything for that matter, a comparative writing about a culture group is ethnology. See, when you are comparing, there is a possibility that you may be ethnocentric. We have used this word earlier. When you are writing a comparative note about a culture group, there might be a quite possibility that you might end up being ethnocentric. Ethnology is comparative writing about a culture group. So when you are comparing, according to Bowers, there might be an inherent possibility of ethnocentrism. You have to keep in mind here today that comparison was not liked by Bowers. He never wanted comparisons. Don't compare one culture group with the other. If you are comparing, there might be a possibility of judging. There might be a possibility of being ethnocentric in your writing. Okay, now. Second one, that is ethnography. Ethnography is detailed writing about a culture group, preferably without comparison. Detailed writing about a culture group, preferably without comparison. So generally, when anthropologists write about culture groups, we name it as ethnographs. Why I am using this word in today's classes this week, not tomorrow, maybe from Wednesday onwards. We would be introducing various culture profiles or ethnographs. So it will be like, we would either introduce a set of new terms in that class, either in the beginning of the class or in the last half hour of the class. Certain new terms we try to make you get familiar with, or we would be introducing certain ethnographs. Ethnograph maybe of a caste group, a tribal group, or maybe some other group, so that you have good stock of information with you, which people call loosely case studies. The meaning of it we would have to see, because what a case study is, it has a proper definition and ways in anthropology. So ethnographs we are going to, and whenever I am giving ethnographs, you maintain a separate record of them. I will tell you what exactly to write under ethnographs when I introduce them to you. The idea is that when you have ethnographs of several culture groups with you, you would have a complete culture of them written at one place. So maybe their economy, their religion, their marital practices, familial practices, etc. You are writing all of them at one place, so that when there is a need, you can use that as an example for wherever it is in your syllabus. So instead of, when we go to write about one type of marriage, I am giving a tribe or a culture group's name and I am not discussing anything else about them, there it becomes difficult for a student to remember. Instead of that, if we are generating ethnographs like this, it may be possible for you to write answers to the questions on ethnograph itself. For example, I tell you, there was one question earlier called write a note on polyandrous societies of India. Write a note on polyandrous societies of India. This was a previous question. When the question is on polyandrous societies of India, he is not simply asking you to write about the trait of polyandry there. Polyandry, you understand? Even if you don't understand, don't worry. We'll talk about it later. Write a note on polyandrous societies of India. The idea is that you pick up a polyandrous society and write the profile of it, write the ethnograph about it. So, if at all ethnographs are readily available to you, such kind of questions can also be answered. Am I clear to you? So that is one term. Now, I'm more curious to take you towards the other thing of the day, that is going to be look at chapter 7, paper 2. From there onwards, at many places you see this word, ethnic. In chapter 9 you have ethnic groups, ethnic movements. In chapter 7 you have pseudo-tribalism, concept of ethnicity. What we would be doing in the class is, wherever related syllabus is there, we bunch them and study in order to avoid duplication, or in order to avoid incomplete understanding. This is a very popular word, even in today's times in the newspapers, day in and day out, we hear this ethnic struggle, ethnicity, ethnic groups. Any idea? Any basic meaning of it? Katha?
People belonging to
one religion and maybe culture and okay, I mean, these are all. What is that oneness? And see, it's something like this. Whatever you're giving as the meaning of it are examples of ethnic groups. So ethnic group can be considered as a group of people belonging to one kind, which and are held by a strong we feeling. Ethnic group is a group of people that belong to one kind, one common kind, one common kind, and are brought together through a strong we feeling. This we feeling is unique. That should be mentioned in your definition. If at all you call some group as an ethnic group, this is a group that has certain common traits. The common trait may be a religion, it may be a region, it may be a caste, it may be a class, or it may be a language, it may be a nationality, or it may be an occupation, whatever it is. That is only a defining characteristic of that ethnic group, but the underlying theme has to be that because of that commonality, there has to be a strong we feeling, because of which they become one. Okay, not every group that may be having a belongingness to a region or a religion, etc., can emerge as an ethnic group. As long as that characteristic remains to be a working characteristic, not on an emotional line of bringing that strong we feeling in them, they do not emerge as an ethnic group. Am I clear to you? So when we say ethnic strife, because of that commonality, because of that strong bonding they have, they may start fighting for their uniqueness, for their survival or whatsoever. So we in the course are going to see several types of ethnic groups that are defined by what is called ethnic boundary. Ethnic boundary. This is a concept that was discussed, explained by Frederick Barth. Right now you don't have the concept of ethnic boundaries in your syllabus per se, but then sometimes what happens is even if one particular concept is not directly there in your syllabus, we make you study in order to give a comprehensive understanding, number one, and secondly, in order to see a dry day there. Suddenly something happens and then from the blue a question comes, you don't know how to answer. Such kind of discussions would help you. Ethnic boundary refers to any characteristic that defines the ethnic group. Ethnic boundary is the characteristic that defines ethnic group. That may be a region, that may be a religion, that may be a class, a nationality, etc., caste, whatever. So based on one particular characteristic, we find several ethnic groups. They may be geographical, they may be linguistic, they may be religious, they may be whatever. Each of them, because of that common characteristic and because of that very strong we feeling, they emerge as a strong group of people. And there could be several others of the same kind. And what is the defining characteristic, whether that is region, religion, etc., we call it ethnic boundary. In order to give it a logical conclusion here, we would be revisiting all these concepts in order to formally make a note in your classes. But here we are only trying to sprinkle certain things that, see, this is what we are going to study in the future. What Barth says is, the basis on which an ethnic group came into existence, which I call ethnic boundary, may get altered over a period of time. I repeat what I said. Sir, be in the class, be in the class, be attentive, be attentive. As they write on the highways, ना क्या कहते हैं उसका क्या था पलक झपकी दुर्घटना घटी. You are not supposed to blink. Focus at each of the statements that we are going to give here, because somewhere or the other we reproduce the sentences. Barth says, the basis on which an ethnic group must have come into existence, which he calls as ethnic boundary, might get altered. Suppose I say that this is the ethnic boundary. It's not a geographical boundary. It's actually an imaginary boundary based on which a group is coming into existence. Suppose the basic reason for the arrival, for the origin of that group itself loses its significance. Like how linguistic state of Andhra Pradesh, when it was created, when the basis itself vanishes, maybe it shows that the group is looking for something else. What one has to look at here is, see, it was there based on one particular criteria, that was the boundary. Over a period of time, what might happen is, because of something that is coming from outside or certain developments from within, you no longer consider this criteria to be a valid one. Today you consider that a valid one, but tomorrow you may think that no, that's not a valid one. When the credibility, the value that you attach to the boundary comes down, there would be now alternative boundaries emerging, and hence maybe perhaps you have different ethnic groups emerging on different criteria. Am I clear to you, sir? No? This is a basic idea about ethnic boundaries. We in the class are going to talk about different kinds of ethnic boundaries, and when it comes to the study of Indian society, when it comes to the Indian society study, we are going to see several ethnic groups. Now, before that shows up, let me say this. There is a particular way in which you answer the questions in this section. Of course, those are some I picked up from the recent exams. Varnashram and the concept of Rina, philosophy behind Purusharthas, and then simply he asked Purushartha, Varnashram, significance of Purushartha. The questions revolve around the same thing. I'll give you a basic structure of your answers. You would be sticking to this kind of a structure, whatever may be the question, unless otherwise specified. See, whenever we are using this, whenever we are coming across these terms, they look to be having some kind of Sanskrit origin. And many times what happens is the meaning we find from the Sanskrit writings, we may not be in a position to clearly translate into English, making it inevitable for us to use the same terminology. For example, when I say Varna, I don't have a word that I can pick up from English to communicate the same meaning of it. Every time I may not be able to get terms such as a clan for Gotra, the way we were describing in the other class. It may not be possible for us to get an English variant everywhere. So you will have to know what is the root meaning of it. And also remember, for the same term in history, different texts must have given a different meaning. But then we stick to the very popular meaning given for that term. So first thing is you should know the meaning of it. Secondly, how the concept was explained by different thinkers. This is here you actually would be, most of us are Hindu, but then I don't think many of us must have read any of our scriptures, if I am right there. What is the scripture that you are having at home? A Hindu religious scripture. Bhagavad Gita. Did you open it any time? or maybe your grandfather had in the tradition, or along with the other properties, he must have given this to you. Other properties were of use to us, but Bhagavad Gita was lying there. Consider this as an opportunity and an occasion to go back, pick up any of the religious scripture. Popularly what we have is Bhagavad Gita. In some of the homes we have Ramayana also. Mahabharata rarely we put at home because we want only Ramas to be produced, not Krishnas from our homes. So mostly we look at Ramayana only. One and only one. Throughout my life and in after my life also, kind of a thing. But Krishna was a very interesting personality, which I personally love. He has a lot of spice in his life. I love spice. In most of the classes, we are going to use spicy fellows in the class. Because, in order to explain things, that's where I would go back to what I was mentioning in one of our classes. I left it there incomplete so that I can pick it up in the other class. We were talking about being 100% there in the situation, which was said by Lord Krishna. You'll have to keep this in mind every time, especially when you're there in the class. If you're not there 100%, he says being 100% is very, very important, so that you pick up the task and bring it to the logical completion. There's a difference between finish and complete. I finished the syllabus is different from I completed it. When I say I completed, there is a comprehensiveness there. Finish is maybe like a mechanical finishing of it. So it's like, students come and ask me, when will you finish the syllabus? If I have to finish, I can finish any time. Maybe in a week's time, maybe in a 1 month's time, etc. But a completion incorporating whatever tools that are there. So whether you have lived the life with a completeness or you have finished the life mechanically, chronologically, that depends on you. That's where, a very interesting thing about Lord Krishna. You know the stories, Lord Krishna stories. Early childhood was there with a lot of gopikas, and the meaning of the gopika is also a debatable thing which we will pick up when we talk about purushartha such as kama kind of things. So he was there with so many gopikas. Numbers also, the specific, 16,000 or 1,600, whatever. Sometimes I get surprised, zeros seem to be having no value. You keep adding and removing zeros from there. And wives also, he has number of wives. Most of the Hindu gods have number of wives. Rama was an exception. Everybody cannot be Rama. But see this, a very interesting thing in Hinduism. We prefer, we propagate monogamy. We propagate, we prefer monogamy. But we are polytheistic. Most of our gods are polygamous. Most of our gods are polygamous. As somebody says, to have more number of partners, more number of wives, is a privilege only gods can have. And hence, we have to be satisfied with only one, whereas gods can have many. This is not my statement. As we get into the course, we would also be giving you the references from various religious texts so that you will not, criticize me of blasphemy anywhere. I am very careful on that front. Of course, when it comes to writing answers, not many such exact references are necessary. But then we recommend the students to mention at least the major text based on which we are trying to explain. So if I am continuing with that, first you give the meaning of it or root words related to it. Then you explain the concept based on various interpretations. So the concept of varna, the concept of dharma for that matter, is explained by different people from different perspectives. So there you are going to write about various dharma shastras. Manu is a popular fellow, Yagnavalkya, we are going to use him many times in the class, and several others for that matter. And then thirdly, I'm coming to maybe this last but one question there, that kind of a question. Whichever concept you are attempting in the exam, you will have to write the significance of that concept. Significance has to be written from two perspectives. One is the erstwhile significance and the other is the current significance. I am giving the structure, మీరు రాసుకుంటున్నారని నేను అనుకుంటున్నాను. If you are not writing, don't think that you can remember. If you don't see me for 2 days, third day you won't recognize me also. Human memory is very short-living. Scribbling is very, very important. After the course is over, you would be really surprised to see those places in your notebook which you'll not understand whether you have written or somebody else has written. That's how the memory works. Sir, he is not mentioning in the question whether it is the contemporary significance or otherwise. But your answer must give traditional significance and contemporary significance. Many times what happens is most of these concepts have a bearing on the religious philosophy. Most of the time they have a bearing on religious philosophy. Whether you call it concept of karma, rina or purushartha, ashrama, whatever, they have something like a philosophical background there. Now I am trying to give you one kind of a common conclusion that you would mention in your exam. Because you see in the entire paper, I don't think there will be more than one questions where significance of a concept is asked. I hope you are following. And considering that as a basis, we are actually trying to make it known to you that, see, this is a popular conclusion that you should be writing, irrespective of whatever is the concept. And this secret is known to you and me only. But in the exam, if two questions come, you will have to work out how you approach them. Generally, what I am saying is, most of these concepts have a philosophical or religious bearing. People generally, whoever is talking about the contemporary significance of any of those concepts, they say that, see, this concept was valid only when religion and those philosophies had a value for us. The moment we started questioning religion, the entire thing comes under question. And we consider all those concepts to be redundant. Be careful here. I am trying to give you a conclusion mostly used for most of these concepts. We say that, see, in the traditional world, they were, in the erstwhile, ancient, whatever world, they were significant because of certain reasons. As time progressed, in the contemporary times, whether they are relevant or not, one of the answers given by many of the people is that because religion itself was challenged, anything related to religion comes under the scan, and hence they seem to have lost their significance. Many students stop there. It almost gives a conclusion that, see, those concepts are no more valid today. But you don't stop there. We are going to say that those traditional concepts seem to be valid even today in a slightly modified way. In a slightly modified way. How? For each of the concepts we are going to see. Whether it was an ashrama system or whether it is the concept of karma, concept of dharma, which seem to be of significance of the erstwhile society, they are still having some kind of a validity today. How we add validity to it, how we say that in a modified sense, even today the traditional concepts still have a value, that's what is going to be your conclusion. Am I clear to you? Sir, okay. That's where we say structures of the answers, how you will answer writing ante idanamata. Okay, remember these no the frameworks, so that whenever you are writing the answers, you fit in there. Now, one of the very interesting things we are going to pick up today in today's class is the concept of is it visible, sir? Social stratification. I'm just introducing this, sir. Originally, this is mentioned in chapter 2, paper 1. But because I have to deal with some kind of a stratified Indian society, social stratification refers to a hierarchical arrangement of a society. It's a hierarchical arrangement of a society on different bases. We have used the name of Louis Dumont in our first class, where we have mentioned Homo hierarchicus, where he says that human is always looking for some kind of a hierarchy. It's but natural. It's but natural. Some kind of a hierarchical arrangement or the other naturally by default exists in all the societies. Some criteria may seem to be existing across the culture groups. Some may be specific to that culture group alone. For example, a gender-based hierarchy, that's where you also have to remember Lord Krishna of being 100% there. I left the story there, let me finish that there. Early childhood was with so many gopikas. Once he enters the adulthood, once he leaves the place, shifts his place to Dwarika. No writing there, no story there tells us about he going back to meet Radha and the others. He demonstrates that at any point of time, wherever I am 100% there. Something that looks very funny to me from today's world's relationships and the way you keep on writing to your friend, whoever it is. I miss you, miss you. I don't understand. The problem for us is when we are there with somebody, we are not there. We are not totally there. When we are in one situation, our mind is wandering somewhere else. And when we are there, we are thinking about this part. The comprehensiveness is absent there. As long as you are not bringing that comprehensiveness, the result is also not ensured. That's why never after he left for Dwarika, he is not thinking about Radha, because when he was there, he was totally there with her. This is the problem in our relationships today. When you are with her, you are thinking about somebody else. Be there, comrade. That's very important, sir. You can examine your own mind. As is said in one of the scriptures there, it is not necessary that you have an extramarital relationship. The moment you have thought of somebody else in a particular way, you have already committed prostitution. Very dangerous. You have to have an absolute command over your mind and your heart. The moment you have thought of somebody else in a different way, you have already committed a sin. I hope you understand the difference between a sin and a mistake. Mistake is something, okay, I have done, I can correct. Sin is something you cannot correct. But whether the sin can be forgiven or not, of course, that's a different arena that we will have to discuss in the class. Huh? So let us come here. Social stratification. Every society has got its own ways of stratifying people. And every stratification might be having its own historical, maybe a philosophical background. Every stratification may be having its own historical, philosophical background. And many times we observe that across the culture groups, people try to justify the stratification using some kind of a religious analogy. I repeat, social stratification is a common characteristic of all the culture groups. It looks as if it is mandatory. I said that some of the criteria of social stratification, basis of social stratification, they seem to be valid for all the societies, such as gender. There could be certain others which may be specific to that culture group alone. And the basis of social stratification of that particular culture group may be having its own cultural, its own historical, its own philosophical, its own theological background. When I am saying that, I am trying to mention that in order to add sanctity to a social stratification, every culture group comes up with its own story, bringing it back to the God thing. Are you with me? Did you understand what I said? Did you understand what I said? If you haven't, you tell me. I don't mind repeating 100 times. Because I don't like the student leaving the class with an unfinished task. You will have to understand and go, then santusht, happy. Generally, we find that in many of the culture groups, they try to give explanations of social stratification from the religious realm. When you say that God is the reason for inequality, God is the reason for social stratification, nobody would question. You accept it as given. Is that fine? That's where I am using one particular term called myth, the definition of which I have already given in one of your classes. Many times social stratifications are backed by mythological stories. Social stratifications are backed by mythological stories. What say, I am introducing the first symbols in the class. This is a symbol that we use for the male. This is for the female. This is for marriage, though it is not an equal relation. This is for divorce, which I really love very much to talk about. These are siblings. They are siblings. This is a symbol that indicates offspring. So these are the offspring. Those are the common symbols. We'll come across several others as we get into the discipline. Now my question was, what do you think? This individual and this individual, I'm not talking about this symbol, are they equal? Or this? Or this? Or there should be this? There should not be that? They need not be that. There shall not be that. Need not be. I may say shall not be. This is going to be one of the discussion points in our classes. There is one topic in paper 1, 2.4 or so, feminist movements and impact on family. feminist movements and impact on family. In the topic of family, feminist movements and impact on family. Very contemporary ones we are going to see there. In the meantime, you try to form an opinion whether they should be equal. Many people say that they need not be because they are born unequal. In the process of creation of the human, first the Adam was created. If at all you believe in the Abrahamic religions, all the Abrahamic religions, they believe that it was Adam that was created first. He was kept lying for a long time. God was thinking what to do with this thing. Then after blowing air into that individual, then he thought that, okay, this fellow is all alone. And then he creates a female from one of the bones of his ribs. They say that there's one rib bone less in the female, or in the male, because that bone is resulting into the female. Then it shows that from the male the female had come. Age-wise also is lesser one, because that fellow was created much earlier to the female. And then there were so many other differences based on which they were created. When the creation itself was on an unequal lines, you cannot demand, forget about pleading, you cannot demand equal status. I am only passing some sentences there. I am not supporting, neither opposing any of them. That is not my current job. By the way, the boys here, can you cook? All of you? You can't cook? And the girls, can you? Not many of you. Things are changing these days. Boys are becoming better cooks than the girls, because one is dependency factor has to come down. Secondly, these fellows are trying to play with their unique skill of cooking. So now you should be independent actually. I can cook my own food, I don't need you, kind of a thing. Sorry, if at all I'm hurting your feelings. This is only the beginning. I would be hurting you many times in the future. Now, keep these things in mind. I was talking about a myth. Every religion, for that matter, every culture group comes up with some kind of a myth or the other in order to justify the social stratification. When God himself is creating, how can we challenge the creation? Now let me take you on that note to somewhere else. Sir, let me introduce you the term Hindu. Many people don't subscribe to this term. They say that this was something given by, whenever we are opening any ancient India textbook, we hear of this. No, it is not Hinduism actually. Somebody else had called us Hindu because there is a river, etc., etc. People say that we actually should use the word Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma, the one that has no beginning and no end. It was there from eternity till eternity, it would be there. When it came into existence, we do not know. To what extent it is going to be there, we do not know. It is Sanatana Dharma. I said to you this earlier that Hinduism is a combination of several faiths. It is not one single faith. Popularly, we call it polytheistic. Some people call it monotheistic also. I'll give you some picture which you will draw at a later point of time. And so polytheistic, monotheistic. There is another popular word, henotheistic. There is also something called a monism. atheism, all of them are a part of Hinduism. It is not one single form of a faith. Henotheistic is popularly now coming to be understood as a variety of Hinduism, a popular faith of Hinduism. That is, you worship one, but you recognize the existence of the others also. That is henotheism. It is becoming popular because even within Hinduism, which if I am calling it a polytheistic religion, even in a polytheistic religion, you are not worshipping all the gods there, which I call pantheism. Pantheism is that variant of polytheism where you are worshipping a good lot of gods. I repeat, henotheism is you worship one, but you believe in the existence of several others. You don't challenge them. Say, this is my God, that is your God. Okay. I have my own relation, you have your own relation. You don't challenge. Polytheism is the belief in several gods. Within polytheism, it can be henotheism or it can be pantheism. Within polytheism, there can be henotheism or polytheism or pantheism. Pantheism is I am worshipping a good lot of gods. So we have our own prayer room, our own temple in our house. You have so many gods there. And the numbers, the idols, the photographs, they keep on adding. So many of them. It's a big business to clean them and keep them. That's why most of the time we don't look at that side. That's the business of the mother or whoever is there. Only on the day of the exam we go there and then we clean all the things and then you say, I'll give you 10 coconuts, please. Kind of a thing. I once again bring it back to you, sir. If you want him to give you what you want, you keep talking to him more frequently than ever. Become more familiar to him. It's not simply that you should be making him familiar to you. You should make him you should make yourself familiar to him. He should be able to recognize you. You should not say that, see, he had created me, how can he not recognize me? No, he won't. Why will he? All of them actually. Monotheism is one single God. Monism is everything is emerging from one. There may be several, but the source is only one. Advaita. Advaita is monism. In culture classes you must have done these things. Advaita and kind of things. एक बार देखिए कभी time मिला तो. Advaita, Advaita. Indivisible. Advaita is everything has got one single source. When I say this, what it means is the creator and the creation are one and the same. The creation comes from the creator. It's something like the philosophy of supreme soul. There's a supreme soul from where small souls are coming out. And these small souls, once they finish their duty, they go and merge with the Supreme Soul. And every creation is coming out of the Creator. When I say that the plants, the water, the environment, the atmosphere, everything is coming out of the Creator, everything is having that kind of an eternal relation with the Creator, that is Advaita. It is an indivisible one. Creator and creation are one and the same. In a way, it goes close to one of the forms of worship in Hinduism called naturism. Naturism is the one where you are worshipping nature. The uniqueness of Hinduism is it is the most environment-friendly religion. The most environment-friendly religion because you worship so many things in the nature. It has its own benefits. Naturism. So all these are parts. Atheism also. The beauty of Hinduism is the one who challenge God, existence of God, are also part of Hinduism. That's one variant within Hinduism. So Hinduism is not one single faith. It's group of different beliefs. And every new faith, it is very easy for Hinduism to create new gods. So we can have a census of gods once in 10 years, like how we have human census. So we would be surprised to see that the number of gods are increasing census after census. There may be some which are falling out of use, out of fashion. Some gods are out of fashion today. The new gods are coming into the market. Because a god with a special capability is the need of the hour. And hence, the god with that capability would be having a market today. When I am saying this, I am hinting at something else. See, throughout our course, our inquiry is to understand culture. Our inquiry is to understand culture. Though I haven't defined culture so far, in spite of the fact that we are talking about culture, culture may be a combination of several things, as I said to you. It may be material, non-material, it may be theological, it may be ideological, it may be material, non-material, this world, other world, is maybe belief systems, tangible, non-tangible, everything. The lifestyle, eating habits, everything, values, ideals, ideologies, everything put together can be called a culture. Who defined where, what, we will see later. Every bit of your life can be part of a culture. And sir, remember, cultures are not static. They are not supposed to be static. Cultures keep on changing. They should be keeping on changing so that they survive. Gods are also like that. If a god has to survive, look at that, if a god has to survive, he should from time to time establish his utility for the devotee. I said that if a god has to prove himself, if at all he has to prove that he is still of some kind of use to the devotee, he should from time to time establish that, see, I am still relevant. Even gods have to prove from time to time. The first major blow with the emergence of rationality, rational and scientific world, is that man started challenging God. Man started challenging God. How painful it would be for God. One day if you challenge your parent, they can't take it. They believe that they are responsible for your birth, for your creation. But just imagine the creator of the universe. You are challenging him, whether you are there or not. That is an atheist versus theist discussion. You may actually indulge in this if you have time. We had one professor in one of our courses called John Lennox. A physicist turned a preacher. He has several discussions on theism and atheism, etc. How can science explain the existence of God, kind of things. You can listen to him, if not for anything else, for a pastime. Maybe sometime in your future, when you want to prove that God is there, his discussions may come handy for you. I'll take you from there. In Hinduism also, similar to several other Hindu society, Indian society, similar to several other societies, we have stratification. Caste is a very popular one that is there in your syllabus. Questions are asked many times on caste. But your syllabus also talks about Varna. Maybe you can have a look at this thing for now. Those are all part of your syllabus. I think. So Hindu society is a combination of all of them. In 3.1, the syllabus describes the basis of Indian society, the basic tenets of Indian society. I have comfortably converted it into Hindu social system. Hindutva groups had a problem with that, less than 80% Indians being Hindus. 80 was something like a psychological benchmark. What can you do? The others are more expeditious. I'm reading out for the last benchers. Varna, caste, rina, rebirth, purusharth, ashram, karma, jajmani, joint family, all of them are there in your syllabus. Rina, I have mentioned 4 categories of Rina: Guru, Deva Rina, Pitru Rina, Atidhi Rina, and then you have in Purushartha, 4 Purusharthas are mentioned: Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. In Ashramas, 4 Ashramas: Brahmacharya, Grihasth, Vanaprasth, Sannyas. Karma, there are various categories in karma. 1 category I have written: Sanchita Karma, Prarabdha and Agama Karma. Remember, sir, Hindu philosophy bases itself on the notion of Punarjanma and karma. Whatever you are today is the result of your past doings. Whether you are happy, unhappy, rich or poor, comfortable, uncomfortable, everything, the stage at which you are born in the social stratification is the result of your karma. There is a supreme Brahma, there is a supreme soul from where all the souls are coming. Soul is eternal. I can't sit quiet, so as you are writing, I am saying this. I am paid to talk, so I can't sit quiet. Soul is eternal. It has no death. It can change forms. It can change forms. Soul can change forms. How it changes, that's what is the narration of our future classes. What I had been focusing all these days is giving certain terms to you to understand the meaning of them. Many times meanings change contextually. You would see how context plays there. Context is very important, sir. You cannot single out statements. Can I go? The first one I am picking up for today's class is Varna. Let me say this in the beginning itself. Most of the time, the British writers, the European writers, focused on Varna description of Indian society. Many times when we observe the writings or the documentaries of the foreigners, they seem to be confused between the terms of Varna and caste. And for the South Indians, I am saying this. Caste is not same as Kula. Kula is to represent a family in Sanskrit. Kula is family. So as we are speaking in the class in the next 3-4 days throughout this week, our focus will be on, at several places, bringing a clear understanding or distinction between Varna and caste. That's once again a favorite question of the examiner. Varna and caste, or Varna model of caste. So right now I'm trying to bring to you the meaning of the word Varna. But before explaining its characteristics, etc., this is a popular hierarchy. What we are writing there is what was explained in Rigveda's 10th mandala. Purusha Sukta. 10th and 9th mandalas were the later additions to Rigveda, you know that? Rigveda's 10th mandala, Purusha Sukta, the hymn describes the origin of Varna. Actually speaking, in addition to Purusha Sukta, elsewhere, there were discussions in Rigveda about the origin of several other things. Don't go by my artistic drawing. This is the Supreme Brahma who created everything in the universe. For example, from the Nabhi comes the atmosphere, and from the feet comes the earth. From the nose comes Vayu. From the mind comes moon. From the eyes come the sun. From the ears come the directions. Kind of. And of course, from the mouth, Indra, Agni. That's why, words are more dangerous than anything else. Their words sometimes look like Agni, fire. You can blow off people, you can burn people with your words. Even if you slap, people don't mind. Even if you hit and beat around, people don't mind. Tongue is a very dangerous thing. Tongue has no bone. It can go in any direction. Vak samyama is very important for an individual to have good relations. Or in order to go to Svarga, or in order to attain moksha, you should have an absolute control over your tongue. Many times we let the tongue do its duty, and later we think about what has went wrong. No one is an exception for that. Most of the time we react immediately. Most of the time we react immediately. When you are reacting immediately, the one that works fast is tongue, which is the reason for all the problems. The reason for increasing divorce rates today, you don't have a control over tongue. On the other hand, when both of you are highly educated, you have additional linguistic skills to abuse each other. This is an interesting thing actually. What education has done, what literacy has done, what female literacy has done. A fight for the rights. The trust element being very weak. Marriages are falling apart so very easily today. because people think that they can live all alone independently. But it's a different story that after one divorce you are looking at the other marriage. We would see what it means. Marriage after marriage, divorce after divorce, we are becoming experts in that. And finally we are not able to understand which marriage is a better one, which partner was a better one. Finally you understand one fine day that the first one was the better one. Now you have lost the bus. He is busy with somebody else. We are going to see several tolerant societies. I don't want to deviate there, though the stories seem to be scintillating, interesting. I know those stories can make you awake in the class, but I don't want to right now. Come back here. Purusha Sukta mentions, and even before Purusha Sukta, Rigveda talks about how various things in the universe were created from the Supreme Brahma. I actually would want to take from here, there. Purusha Sukta mentions that most of us are aware of it, that from the bodily organs of the Brahma, the four varnas were created. From the face comes the Brahman, and then from the shoulders the Kshatriya, from the thighs Vaishya, and from the feet the Sudra. Because in the bodily arrangement, Shudra comes from the feet, the lowermost part of the body, hence is the position there. This is a mythological story. This is a mythological story. When I say myth, it may be untrue, but you are made to be believing it, to be true, so that the status quo can be maintained. Nobody would question the lower status. I am Shudra because that's how it is. And the birth of an individual into those strata is attributed to the karma. Karma of the previous janma decides your present janma. Manu is an interesting fellow. There are very huge number of dharma shastras there. Many times we depend on Manu and Yagnavalkya. I said this in the previous class also. Manu I like because it is something like he is pretty much clearly communicating by doing which act, in what form you would be born in the next janma. One of the things he mentions when it comes to the student also, there should be a particular kind of a behavior with the guru. The student has to. I don't want to talk about anything else, but only to in those yawning and sitting with the crossed legs. If you're yawning in front, no, it's okay, I don't mind. We are living in Kali Yuga. I don't mind. Yawning and crossing the legs in front of the guru would result in the life, in the future life, as a donkey. So, now if you see a donkey on the road, you understand why a donkey there. That maybe there was that kind of a behavior in the previous janma. Through all these narrations, we see that the scriptures are trying to regulate the behavior. You'll have to understand this, that for several people to live in the society together, there have to be some rules or the other. And if the rules are actually related to the supreme gods, there would be natural acceptance by the people. Now, once the supreme God himself comes into question, when you start questioning the existence or the power of the God, then the whole lot of rules that emerged from the faith will be challenged. It is at that time there have to come rules from within the society so that an order can be maintained, a social order can be maintained. So rules other than that of the religion may be a law, a neutral law, a political law, a legal one would come into picture so that your behavior is regulated. We'll have to understand that individual is generally controlled in the whole process. Behavior of the individual has to be controlled so that the society can survive. Individual is not the ultimate one. Individual, of course, is necessary. But in order for that individual to survive, society also has to survive. So individual has to make the sacrifices for the society to sacrifice. In return, he might survive. I said something. But when I am saying all this, the Abrahamic religions might come all together with a different answer. For the Abrahamic religions, individual might be very important, because for this individual, everything was created by the God. Whether we believe in the 7-day and Sabbath story or not, but then, who is important, whether the individual or society, it varies from culture group to culture group. Why culture group to culture group? Within your own discipline of anthropology, go to chapter 6, paper 1. Chapter 6, paper 1. Are you fine in the class? Are you fine, everybody? Huh? A very vital question, sir. The question is very important for me. In chapter 6, paper 1, two people are mentioned. You know them, Malinowski and Darcy Brown. One is mentioned in functionalism, the other is mentioned in structural functionalism. Bear this in mind, that for Malinowski, individual is very important. For Malinowski, individual is very important. For R.C. Brown, society is important. For Malinowski, culture exists, culture emerges for the individual's necessity, for the individual's survival. Whereas for R.C. Brown, society, for its survival, individual has to follow certain rules, make sacrifices. I was taking it from somewhere else. Who is important, whether it is the individual or the universe or the society, it varies from culture group to culture group, from faith to faith. For certain faiths, individual is important. There may be a personal God. Every individual is important for the God. But in certain other religions, universe, survival of the universe is important. Majorly like Hinduism, survival of the universe is important. For the survival of for the universe, individuals have to follow certain rules. Individual has to make sacrifices. Here also in anthropological thought, we see that for some people individual is important, for some people society is important. Culture, the whole thing, comes into existence for an individual's survival, whereas for Brown, for a society to survive, you'll have to make sacrifices, you'll have to follow certain rules. Okay, now, coming there. I said that Purusha Sukta is describing a myth. Myths are followed so that you give sanctity to the discipline. Now I'll say certain things related to Varna there. Though questions related to theory of origin of Varna are not asked in the UPSC, if you look at chapter 3, you have one topic called Theories of Origin of Caste. Chapter 3, paper 2, you have Theories of Origin of Caste. Did you notice? In fact, I have to say this, sir, wherever you go in the discipline, there is one tag attached. In all the chapters, you find the origin, you find evolution. Evolution of political systems, evolution of economic systems, evolution of religion, evolution of every damn thing. So finding origins and drawing evolutionary narrations is one of the basic characteristics of anthropology. At every place you find this effort to go to the origins to establish evolutionary sequences. same thing we see in Indian society also. When it comes to caste, there is a clear narration there. But in Varna related things, though the syllabus is not mentioning, many of the books talk about evolution of Varna, emergence, origin of Varna. Purusha Sukta itself clearly mentions the origin of Varna. Brahma is the reason for it. From different parts of his body, these Varnas are born. And because of that sequential order, Shudras have an inferior status. But look at it from the other way. When we go to the temple, of course, in most of the temples, we are not allowed into Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorum where the chief god sits. You are only allowed to see the god from a distance. You cannot touch. Not all Brahmins can also touch, only a few that are assigned for that job. The privileged few. Because even in the Brahmanical categories, there are subcategories. So whoever is the supreme Brahmanical sect, that alone has the access to touch, bathe, decorate and touch the god, enter the Garbhagriha. Only in a very few sects in Hinduism, say for example, the temples of Sai, Shirdi Sai, he sits in the very open. You can actually go touch him. Whoever it is, whichever god, whether it is in Garbhagriha or outside, if God suddenly appears to you, where will you touch him? You go and touch his head or maybe the shoulders and then maybe the stomach, the belly. Go and touch the feet only. Maybe you think that feet is the most sacred one. If feet is the sacred one, something that is born from the feet also is a sacred one. If at all we are trying to give categorization of Varna based on the place from where they are born in the Brahma, maybe you are trying to grade the body of the Brahma based on the sacredness. Feet are less sacred and face is more sacred kind of a thing. This actually challenges. This challenges why you touch the feet of the gods and something that has come from the feet of the god is considered to be inferior. Nevertheless, as I said to you, every concept has got its own meaning and explanation and interpretations. In your history books, you must have studied this, the origin of Varna. They trace it back to the Aryan arrival into Indian subcontinent. You can recall that Dasa and Dasyu kind of a discussion where the Aryans when the Aryans entered Indian subcontinent, where from they have come, that's also a thing of the argument. But suppose we believe that they have come from somewhere, but they have come, that is true. If at all we accept that, when they have come, the idea is that maybe they are fair-skinned people. When they have entered this particular region where the people with the darker skin complexion were existing, the locals were considered to be inferior to the foreigners. So it's maybe because of that the color thing flows from generation to generation across the ages. We have this color climax there. We always see that the fairer skins are superior to the colored skins. People try to argue from various fronts why this kind of a racism. This is one kind of a racism, color-based racism. Fair skin is considered to be superior. We have one topic there called race criteria, 9.5, race criteria. There we are going to talk about world races. What are the criteria of categorization of populations into races? Color was the earliest one. Somehow the tendency, we don't come out of that tendency, however thick chocolate black you are with yellow tinge. Whenever we give the criteria to find our mate, we give the fair skin as the first criteria. You may be the darkest thing on the face of the earth, but then when you are choosing a mate, the mate has to be flawless, without a small darker patch there. ఏం చేసుకుంటావు కలర్ తీసుకుని కడుక్కొని తాగవు కదా, బట్ దెన్ సమ్హౌ we are going to see several narrations there. Sir, here maybe first I would try giving you something which you may make a brief note there, and then we would talk about each of them. Just have a brief noting of that. This is not the classical evolutionist E.B. Tyler, this is the other one. Spelling is also different. He says that in Hinduism, Varnas have different kinds of interpretations and understandings. There are 4 Varnas, 3 of them are called Deva Varnas, one of them is Asura Varna because they are considered to be the dark fellows. At a social level, we categorize them as Dvija and non-Dvijas. Each Varna is assigned one color and a specific direction, a specific yuga, and of course, in the Yagna, there is a specific role assigned to them. Sacrificial role assigned to them. So my effort here is to explain several terms there. And then I will go back to talk once again about the characteristics, guna, of each of the Varnas and how Varna operates. We would also be looking at whether Varna is an existing empirical one or an imaginary one. I started my narration saying that for most of the time when foreigners were writing about Indian society, they were using Varna, not caste. Varna looks like, clearly you are categorizing the entire Indian subcontinent into 4 groups, four layers. Generally, first 3 Varnas are called Dvija. Dvija are twice born. Twice born Varnas, most of us know these things, but for a formality I have to say this, if at all any lesser souls are there who did not hear of this before. Dvija is twice born. One is a biological birth, the second is a spiritual, ritual birth. First is biologically when you are born, second one is when the Upanayana happens. Upanayana is considered to be the second birth. The 3 Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya, are considered to be Dvija because all the 3 are assigned to this particular ritual of Upanayana. Upanayana is when your second birth starts actually, nullifying whatever deeds you have done prior to that. Sir, each of these concepts is linked to the other concept. We cannot explain one without mentioning the other. When I am saying that these are the twice born Varnas, it means that when you are going from one stage of life, say, when you are entering Brahmacharya, you enter it after Upanayana. There are 4 ashramas in Hinduism: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. Brahmacharya is entitled only for the first 3 Varnas, not for the Sudras. Sudras do not have access to Brahmacharya, meaning they cannot study. Brahmacharya is where you study, where you go to the teacher, you take books and you take whatever and you study, prepare. Till you get married, that is Grihastha. Or maybe till you don't pass the exam, you are in Brahmacharya. Once you pass the exam, you enter Grihastha. Manu says a Hindu life is for 100 years. Hindu life is for 100 years. When you seek blessings of the elders, they say live for 100 years. They won't say 101, 50 years, whatever. 100 years. 100 years is a complete life. That is divided generally into 4 parts, 25 each. And you enter Brahmacharya at a particular age. At what age you enter Brahmacharya varies from Varna. based on the syllabus. Brahmin has a higher syllabus to study, more books to study. So Brahmin enters at an early age, 8 years of age. Kshatriya may enter at 10, Vaishya may enter at 12. Number of books, number of references coming down. It's not simply that. Based on the varna to which you belong, what you wear in the sacred thread, it varies. With which material you make the sacred thread, how many turns are there in the thread, that varies based on to which varna you belong. Thickest one for the Brahmin and the softest material for the Brahmin. Bahubali, Rana fight untundi chudandi. With that bullfight, Rana's bullfight, he removes the sacred thread and then he starts fighting. Or Padman movie, Padman. When he does something that has not to be done, he pulls the thread and puts it there, meaning that you are hanging it temporarily. Meaning that when you are wearing the sacred thread, you are not supposed to do certain things. I said so much there. Thread is a material. You may consider it to be an insignificant material. But that material reminds you every time that, see, you will have to follow certain rules. Why do you think that at the time of marriage, some kind of material or the other is given to the couple to wear it on the body throughout their life, irrespective of the culture? A boy may be wearing a ring and then she may be wearing, based on the culture, there is some material that is given to them. It is to remind you, when you see her, this reminds, see, there's somebody else waiting for you. Material becomes necessary in order to regulate your behavior. So these three varnas, which we call Dvija varnas, twice born varnas, they are entitled to brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is the time where you study, but the time when you enter brahmacharya varies based on the content that you study. What you study also varies, syllabus varies. It's not simply the volume, but what you study also varies based on to which varna you belong. So each of the varnas have got their own role to perform. And as the narration goes, that each of them are given one particular direction. Kshatriya has to rise from the east. He is synonymous to sun and hence it is east. West is that of the Shudras. We will have to talk a lot about that. Sir, in your syllabus, there is one question. Generally, it is asked from village India. Geographical location of different caste groups in rural setup. Geographical location, comment on geographical location of different caste groups in the village. Though most of us are from the urban centers, at least some of us who have seen the villages or lived in there, you might recall that in the village there are particular streets assigned to particular caste group or religion. So there is a Brahmin street or Kshatriya street, etc., based on the caste. And also that it is generally seen that the low caste or untouchables, they live on the western side of the villages or on the outskirts of the villages, on the outskirts, especially on the western side. Western side is also the place where you have the graveyards. So the people living near to the graveyards will be the untouchables and then maybe perhaps the Shudras. All the drainages of the village are drain outside onto the western side. They drain out to the western side. This was something in a very typical rural Indian setup. which was of course to change in certain parts of the country because of certain developments. That particularly happened when numbers became important. In democracy, when numbers become important, the low caste becomes important. And from untouchable, they become touchable. And the places where you were never inclined to go, you start entering those places because a few votes are important for you. And after the reservation of constituencies had come, reserved constituencies, SC constituencies, scheduled tribe constituencies, we see that in those regions, the said community starts becoming dominant. So we see that now in certain places, especially where the scheduled caste reserved constituencies are there, those of you who come from such constituencies, you must have seen this. The other part of the village may not be having a blacktop road or a tiled or closed drainage, but this part of the village where the low castes live, we see the properly closed tiled drainages. And maybe potable water is mostly available for the low caste region when compared to the upper caste region. I see in my own village which had this kind of a change. We see the low caste, when they were trying to get jobs in the Middle East, a hell of a lot of change occurs there. The remittances from the Middle East starts to change the landscape of the village. Earlier it used to be like the western part of the village was a stinking part. But with the remittances we see that the western part has got multi-storied buildings, whereas the rest of the regions where either the Kshatriya or the Brahmin streets are there, we still have the tiled houses, tiled top houses, or maybe makeshift houses there. But then the western part where the untouchables live, there you have multi-storied pakka structures with house-to-house water facility, and no more stink there. It is the ether of the Middle East that welcomes you. And it also has a say on the real estate. The prices on the western side of the village increasing when compared to the rest of the, and these regions stink now. There's a change. That is one of the reference. We are going to see who studied, which villages were studied, and how these results are claimed by them. Those are the things to be done in the future. Coming to the other one, yuga. Every varna has got its own yuga. See, in each of the yugas, one particular varna prevailed. Krita or Sat Yuga, the earliest yuga, where Brahmins prevailed. They were having the uppermost status. When it comes to Treta Yuga, it was Kshatriyas. In the Dwapara, it was Vaishyas. In the present one, that is the Kali Yuga, it is where the Shudras prevail. Do not grumble. Do not question the reservation policy. Do not say that they are having undue advantage. You had yours when you were in Krita, Treta or Dwapara Yuga. Now it is the Kali Yuga where the Shudras have to prevail. It is written and hence it is happening. So don't question. That's where is the beauty of Hinduism. If you believe in Karma Siddhanta, if you believe in these notions, you will not have many complaints. You will have a happy life. As Swami Vivekananda was comparing beggars of America with beggars of India, Indian beggars are devatas when compared to them who are demons. Because we believe in Karma Siddhanta, we are here, what we are today, because of what we have done. I am beggar in this Janma because I have done something not very good in the previous Janma. This time, in this Janma, if I beg properly, my next Janma will be good. I have no complaints. Sir, in the future classes, what we are going to see is why is it that I am doing so much in this Janma, I am working hard, sweating out, I am not getting a result, whereas the other fellow has just passed out of the college, he was not even regular to the college and he had so many backlogs in the college, and most of the 60 backlogs he finished only in the last year, but in the civil services in the first attempt he clears the exam. Whereas you, being a gold medalist, have been struggling for so long, so many attempts have gone, and you know everything about the exam, you know every part of your syllabus, not able to clear. The answer lies in the Karma Siddhanta. Karma of not this Janma, karma of the previous Janma. Go back to that chart that you have drawn there. 3 words I have written there. Sanchita, Prarabdha and Agama Karma. Every karma that you do gives the result. It has to give result. When the karma gives result depends on the Supreme God. Sometimes, you hear people saying that times have changed in the Kali Yuga. Whatever you have done, good or bad, results are given in this Janma itself. Maybe God did not want to have those kind of estimates for the next Janma. Population is also growing tremendously. Everything lies in the belief in Punarjanma. As it is said, the way you sow, you reap. Very interesting notations there. I would want to talk a bit there before taking you to the Varna explanations. Every karma has got it, so I'll explain the 3 terms there, Sanchita, Prarabdha and Agama Karma. Every karma should give result. Sukarma would give good result, Kukarma would give the bad result. What is Su, what is Ku, it is explained in various books. Sanchita karma are those karma, the karma are performed, result is already given to you. Sanchita karma is you have already performed, result is given. You have done something in the previous Janma, you are born in this particular state, meaning some karmas are already paid off. Prarabdha are karma already performed, result pending. You have performed a karma, result pending. 3rd June you have written the exam, karma is performed, result pending. Agama, the karma that you are yet to perform, result of course will come later, September 29th, when you are going to write your main exam. Whether you would write main exam or not depends on the karmas that you have already performed. The result is soon to come. When you hear people saying that in the UPSC, there has to be some luck factor. The meaning of luck factor is partly karma and fate. Very interesting things, sir. You hear many people saying this. There has to be some luck factor in the exam also. I have done everything possible, but something is not clicking. What is not clicking is your karma. Painful it looks. 4 times consecutively you go to the interview, can't make it. What must have gone wrong? God knows. You can also know if you write the tests every year. But even after writing the whole lot of tests, I am not able to understand where things are going wrong, because you are carrying the burden of the past. The soul that takes form, different forms, one janma after the other, that carries the load of the karma. There is one beautiful concept of karma saya. I'll come to fate also. There's a beautiful concept of karma saya. Even Abrahamic religions believe in that. with a different notation, of course. When you die, or when one dies, no, instead of saying you, death is something that is considered to be inauspicious by many. But death may be considered as a very auspicious occasion by few, because that is the time when you get to meet your Supreme Lord. Or death is something like a deliverance of the soul from this worldly issues. You are now let loose. You don't have the problem of earning for the month, earning for her, for them also. We'll have to talk a lot about this, for whom you will earn, kind of a thing in Dharma. So when one dies, you go to death ceremonies. Death ceremonies you will have to go for various reasons. One, you see your future there. I don't miss death ceremonies. Marriage, etc. can be missed out. Everybody is happy, posing on the dais, and that's one nasty thing again. Posing. But death is something that explains to us how the culture group conceives that particular event. And along with the dead body, if you are going, every culture group has got its own style of dealing with the dead bodies. So some cremate, some bury, some do different kinds of things. Half-burnt bodies, you leave it so that the other life forms can eat them, kind of. Most of the sects in Hinduism, they believe in incineration, cremation. They believe in that because once the soul gets out, I mean, there are different stories again. Some say, medically speaking, the decomposition would damage. And then some say that if you are going on burying, the living people will not have land, only the dead people will start occupying more land. That is a problem of many cities these days. Graveyards are much bigger than living spaces. And hence, in several continents, in Australia also, there are some regions where people are trying to convert the graveyards into living regions because space is a constraint. In Hinduism, one of the beliefs is that the body has to be burnt so that the clothing, the old clothing is worn off, is removed. The body should enter the other, the soul should enter the other body. Technically speaking, you should eliminate the possibility of coming back here. This body should be eliminated so that the new body will come for you. We had one movie, Daru, Telugu, Daru, Ravi Teja. Those of you who do not belong to Telugu fraternity, I think this is the, you are welcome into our Telugu world. Most of our Telugu movies are either dubbed or remade into various other languages. People actually blame me for that very high affection towards Telugu, but then I can't do much about it. You can't change me. They tried to, but failed. In that movie, what happens is, this is subject matter only. Yama also can make mistakes. Yama also can make mistakes. Yama's duty is to confiscate lives. Sometimes the letter may go to wrong address. When the letter goes to the wrong address, a wrong man's soul is confiscated. So that's what happens there, wrong man's soul. People were in a hurry. The moment soul is gone, they burnt it. Now after some time, Yama realizes that a wrong man was brought. So he tells the man to go back. But if you peep out and see from Swarga or Narak, whatever, the body is not there. Where will he go? So he was given a choice of 7 different other bodies. Choose one among them. The option given to him was, you go, stay in that body for some time, see how the body is performing, and then you select where you want to live. In the whole hilarious process, what is actually communicated is, soul is something that has no death. These are all physical bodies that have to be worn off one day, and you will have to enter some other. When it comes to the Hindu philosophy, the ultimate goal of every Hindu is to attain moksha. Moksha is the deliverance of the soul from the cycle of death and birth. And finally, you go meet the Supreme Soul. Now, in the whole process, there are several things that actually come as questions. Though that is not a part of your syllabus, I would want to ask these questions, Whether the concept of heaven and hell are ingrained in Hinduism, if at all they are there, when is the time when you go to hell or heaven? Even from the other faiths where hell and heaven, a philosophy is there. You do good things, you go to heaven, you do bad things, you go to hell. This is the basic thing that is explained to us. But when is the time when you go to hell or heaven? Suppose I take any Abrahamic religions. In Abrahamic religions, also Christianity, Islam, they have their own differences there, when you go to hell and when you go to heaven. Any kind of a brief idea you might be having. Suppose you believe that there is a hell and heaven. I do good things, I go to heaven, and vice versa. When will I go? Okay, there is a judgment day. Whoever is the judge, he will come. He would say, okay, where will he send you? Based on your karma, meaning, how is the calculation done? How is the calculation done? Okay, good and bad, all these are registered. Islam believes that there is one fellow here, both of them are writing. Throughout your life, they are writing. The books are submitted to the God. And then God will see the books. There are 100 good things, 150 bad things. Is it that way you are judged? Suppose I am mixing the Hindu thing there. Hindu philosophy says every karma has got its result. Every karma should give the result. If I am believing that for these 100 good things, will I be given some kind of a good result, an award? And then for these 150 things, if I am being punished. So where will I go first? Will I go to hell first or heaven first? Based on the number, and 50, okay, 50 more, and hence. And then, where will I stay for how much time? Suppose it is 100 good karmas and 150 bad karmas. If I go by one of your answers, that see, where 150, that is more. Maybe I'll have to stay there for more time. How will he arrange the things? Is it that everybody should go to hell first and then heaven? Or the other way? Based on least count, you should finish off that first. Okay, 100 I finished first, that is Svarga I finished first. 150 Narak, I go there, I finish for 150, then where will I go? If that is the case, if my karmas are already paid in the form of heaven and hell, how will I be born? Because my next janma is based on the previous karmas. I have no count of the previous karmas now. I have already exhausted in heaven and hell. Where will I be born now? I got my thing. That's the reason why I asked you to watch the early morning Adhyatmic channels. Try following one or a couple of them. See what they are actually teaching about Svarga and Narak. One of the philosophies in Hinduism says that there is nothing like Svarga or Narak. It's only an imaginary thing. What is real is moksha. Either you would go meet the supernatural, supreme God, once you have attained moksha or not. Now the inquiry is who can get moksha and how they can get moksha. Coming back here. So I was saying that don't complain about reservations, Kali Yuga, Shudra has to rule, be happy, your turn was over, now is the turn for you to struggle. Huh? They are very interesting things here that you keep there. From time to time we would be visiting that slide. There are two words that I want to introduce here. Then I'll slowly bring it back to fate and other things. In social status, in social stratification, status is where you lie in the hierarchy. A status can be ascribed or achieved. In any social stratification, a status or a position in the hierarchy can be attained through ascription or achievement. Ascribed status is the one that you get by birth, whereas achieved status is the one where you achieve by your doings, your merit. So if a Raja's son becomes a Raja, that is ascribed one. Whereas if an untouchable's son becomes a king, maybe that is by merit. I would give you one link here, which you would back home watch.
उस विराट पुरुष के मन से चंद्रमा, उसकी आंखों से सूर्य, उसके मुख से इंद्र और अग्नि, उसकी सांसों से वायु ने
This particular thing, maybe you can go back and watch. That was my general procedure is once your Dropbox arrangement is made, such kind of videos I would dump there because see, when it is a 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes videos that I will have to show in the class, I would do that. Bigger ones, if I think that you will have to spend time at home, sometimes we ask you to watch certain movies also back home, 1 hour, 45 minutes movies, etc. Anthropology movies, not the other ones. I would name them and maybe perhaps I would dump them in the Dropbox. You would watch at home and and you will make a proper note from there. The first movie I will have to suggest in that sense, maybe you may make a note and then do it back home. That is A Candle in the Dark. Candle in the Dark. Candle in the Dark is the movie of the first evangelist who had come to India, a British evangelist, and it actually describes how in the East India Company time religion was not really encouraged. And I think that explains that particular setting. I'm sure you would relish that. Once we come to the topics such as Christianity impact on Indian society, how it had spread, what are the obstacles it had faced, etc., that movie can help you. And here, coming back here. The question here is how one can get the status of a Varna. Varna is not something that you get based on birth. It is something that you earn through your karma, what you do. It is a merit-based position. In that video itself, he explains, as the video flows, there are Rigvedic and other references are mentioned there, like Rigveda 9th chapter, 112th verse, etc. I want you to religiously make a note of them. It is not simply in the Rigveda, from various other samhitas also there is a reference made there. In Rig Veda, in one of the places it says, it actually describes the setting of a girl who describes the members of her family. One is a Brahmin, the other is a Kshatriya, the other is a Shudra, etc. It explains very clearly that every individual is born a Shudra. Every individual is born a Shudra. Based on your karma, you attain the Varna position. So every Varna has got its own duties. See, it's something like this. It is believed that in the beginning, based on the color, Varnas were created. Secondly, after a bit of cohabitation in the Indian subcontinent of the ones who have come from outside and the Dasyus that were natively there, the first occurrence of intermingling happens. So the story goes like this. They have come and then they have seen the darkest fellows here, and then they said, we are the Aryas and you are the Dasas or Dasyus, whatever. And it is generally said that these are all imaginary things. The Aryas must have come alone without their families, without their females. So naturally, they started mingling with the people here, because of which the intermediate colors have come. So initially it was only black and white, and then intermediate colors have come, browns and yellows or whatever. That was because of Varna Sankara. Varna Sankara between Aryas and Dasas in the first go must have given rise to subsequent Varnas. In the parallel story, how it goes is, over a period of time, people based on their karma or the occupation they are choosing, they started to belong to one particular Varna. So if it is the Brahmin kind of duties you are performing, you become a Brahmin, etc., etc. The duties also we are going to see. But then in the Rig Veda, it is very much clear that based on your karma, your Varna is decided. It is not something that goes by birth. Varna is not something that goes by birth, whereas caste is something that goes by birth. So, as the narration goes within the same family, if different people belong to different Varnas, it means that based on every individual's deeds and occupations, your Varna is decided. In the third stage, over a period of time, it must have so happened that people who chose a particular Varna, say a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, etc., they, due to various reasons, they started to see to it that their children also start following the same Varna. Over a period of time, Varnas became occupational groups that are hereditary. Are you following what I am saying? This is all an imaginary story, sir. Proper records are not there. We would take it to a logical conclusion. We are trying to see how Varna must have originated, how it must have changed. So later what must have happened? Once it emerged as a occupational or a guild group, they must have gone for a strict endogamy. Endogamy, you understand. Endogamy is a rule by which you are supposed to marry from within your own culturally defined group. So when you are practicing endogamy, along with the belief that you actually get a position by birth and all the other paraphernalia you are trying to add, a Varna eventually became a caste. Did you get it? I repeat, sir. First they came, that color, this color, we are different. But then I did not come with a female, I want your female. So I started establishing a contact, several other colors came. Along with that, I started introducing a philosophy that based on the occupation, I can have a Varna. Later it is seen that the Varna started to be followed by birth, and then they added endogamy rule to it, made it much stricter, and then something like watertight compartments you were creating where your identity cannot be changed. Once you are born into that group, then Varna became a caste. This is, if at all you are explaining evolutionarily the arrival of caste from Varna. Here there is no proof. You cannot do a field study also, go back and do the field study, it's not possible also. That's the reason why M.N. Srinivas says that it is very difficult to conclude on the origins of any social institution or organization. It becomes very difficult to conclude on the origins of any social institution, especially if no written records are available, no authentic records are available. You cannot travel back in time to see whether Varna had become caste. You are only trying to link certain dots and try to construct a hypothetical story. On the other hand, for M.N. Srinivas, even if you would want to go back and do, not simply that it is impossible to conclude on the evolution of any social practice or social institution, he says it's a futile effort. Authentic story cannot be written. What matters is what a social organization or institution is doing now, what functions it is delivering, and how the internal arrangement is, whether it is changing, if a caste is existing today, how it is performing. I hope you are following. And I have named M.N. Srinivas in structural functionalism, if you could recall. He was somebody who was not agreeing for evolutionism. For him, past is not so very important. Origins are not important. But then he says, study the present and see how in the present times the organizations are changing, how they are delivering functions. Are you okay, sir? So going back to Varna. Varna, we have a story of mythology, that is Purusha Sukta, which explains the origin of each of those Varnas. And because of intermingling of the Varnas, Varna Sankara, intermittent forms must have originated. I would be providing you some tables there, which Varna, meeting which Varna, results in which Varna. This is where I introduce certain other terms called Are you able to sit through in the class without any problem? Without any kind of moving around in the chair? Chairs are comfortable? No? Tell the management. Because for me, time flies off. People ask me, how can you talk for such a long time? I can talk here because there's nobody to listen at home. Whatever talking is there, I do in the class only. These are two forms of marriages. Actually, they are the part of chapter 2 in paper 1, marriage topic, Anuloma and Pratiloma, but here it is apt and hence I introduce here. Anuloma are legal marriages, acceptable marriages. Pratiloma are illegal marriages, illegitimate, non-desirable. Result is bad. You know these symbols, right? Male, female. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. I'll just do this and then we would finish our planner. Anuloma is, maybe you can scribble somewhere, Anuloma is a man from an upper Varna, marrying a female from the same Varna or Varnas below his. I repeat, Anuloma is a man from an upper Varna marrying a female from the same Varna or the Varnas inferior to him. A man from the upper Varna marrying a female from the same Varna or the females from the lower Varnas. Vaishya male marrying either Vaishya female or the Shudra male, female. A Shudra male marrying Shudra female. This is acceptable. What is desirable? There's a difference between acceptable and desirable. What is desirable is marrying the same Varna individuals. That is desirable. But suppose every time it may not be possible. Sometimes certain other things happen. So you have to go out of box. Then what is acceptable is a male from the upper Varna marrying females from the Varna lower to him. These are acceptable. But then, if a Brahmin marries a Brahmin, child is a Brahmin. Kshatriya marries a Kshatriya, child is a Kshatriya. But if there is a crisscrossing there, Brahmin and Kshatriya, Kshatriya, Vaishya, children are different. I will show that picture in tomorrow's class, what yields to what. These are acceptable. These are not acceptable. A female from the upper Varna marrying male from the lower Varnas. A female from the upper Varna marrying male from the lower Varna. Vaishya female marrying Shudra, Kshatriya female marrying either Vaishya or Shudra. These are unacceptable marriages, pratiloma, against the rule. All these marriages yield in the lowly births, different forms of untouchable females and untouchable individuals. That is pratiloma. Don't think that when you are choosing to marry somebody that is only affecting you both, that is going to affect your child also. But at that moment, nothing can be seen. You are in blindness. Love is blind. When you are blinded there, you can't see the future, not simply your future, your children's future also. I would leave it there for the day. We will write your planner. Last two lectures also we did not write, so we will first write those two. 7th June. It is generally for paper 1 and paper 2. The topic was, what is anthropology? Second lecture, 8th, papers 1 and 2, introducing religion. Lecture 3 today. Today is 11th, right? 11th of June. I have done different things here. Largely my focus is on paper 2, but then we are writing a list of things that we have done. We discussed certain terms, so you can list the terms that we have come up with. Action anthropology versus applied anthropology, then terms such as ethnic group, ethnology, ethnography. Then we introduced Indian society, where I started with the Varna. Sir, right now the study source still lies to be your class notes. I still haven't given any dictation. Once I start giving you different sources, we would start filling them up. Thank you so much.